Hello to everyone. Thanks for this invitation and this opportunity to talk with you. This night I'm going to talk about producing the common and reproducing life. Keys towards rethinking the political. This is the work we have been developing here in the Instituto de Ciencias Sociales y Humanidades in Puebla, Mexico, for the last 3 years, more or less, with a research group that is integrated by myself and two young colleagues that are very brilliant and very kind, that are Mina Lorena Navarro and Lucia Linsalata. Okay. This work, I'm going to try to present the main ideas of our work. So we can try to, we are looking forward to answer the following questions. And I hope these questions make sense to you. And I really hope they do. Okay, the questions are, is it possible to think of other ways of producing concrete wealth for not fully subjected to the mandates of capital? In this question, we are focusing in two things. We are thinking about producing concrete wealth. So we bring from the Marxism theory this distinction about abstract wealth, capital, mainly. All the things that we have, all the means of existence, as the Commoners School from New York says. And these means of existence that exist in a variety of forms tend to become capitalism, tend to become capital when the development of capitalism goes on and destroys mainly forms of relation between people. Okay, the second question we think about is it possible to have other ways of organizing and reproducing social life which are more satisfactory than the modes of existence imposed by the modern capitalist world? To what extent is the use value of the life forced upon us by capitalist modernity, the only one imaginable? Can we recover our capacity to self-determinate the goals, rhythms, and forms of our everyday life? Okay, that questions are the questions we are thinking about. And we have been trying to make a lot of research and a lot of reflections about them, trying to study and participate in some of the struggles we have nearby. We participate in them, and we study and we try to get to learn all we can from the struggles that are developing all around the world nowadays. Okay, the way we deal with these questions, the proposal we are trying to fix up is what we call the production of the common. Okay. The production of the common could be first explained by saying that we are dealing with all the activities, human activities, that have to do with the production of the commons in common. Okay, why do we like talking about production of the common? Because we want to make a difference from some other ways in which all this stuff about the commons and commoning, etc., has been dealt in the last years. First of all, we want to separate or to distinguish from this school of the commons, understood as things, as only things. I mean, water as common things, the sea as a common thing, land has for centuries not been a common thing. I mean, it has been common just in very, very few places of the world, but things that air is a common thing. So we don't want to think about the commons only as things. Mainly, we want to stress in the activity, the social activity, the social links that support activities and tasks in many forms that allow the existence of the commons as things. I mean, the activity of getting together with some others, of producing these links and taking care of them and regulating them, allow people to make concrete wealth that sometimes is presented in the way of a common as a thing. So we talk about production of the common, and we take distance from this school of understanding the commons as just material things. Okay. In talking about production of the common or thinking about the production of the commons in common, it doesn't sound very nicely, but well, we hope it explains the main idea we want to present to you. We separate also with the work about the commons that has been discussed around Europe mainly in the last decade, let's say. This work that has been presented and work about mainly by Antonio Negri and Michael Hart. I mean, we think their work, it's very, very important, but we don't like the emphasis or the way they focus, they approach to some of the things they say. Why? Because we don't think that capital makes cooperation, which stands the common. We don't think that way. It works that way. I mean, Negri and Hart mainly approach to the production of value, and they think about a set of immaterial goods that result from social cooperations that take place in productive terrains of advanced capitalism on the basis of technical composition of labor. Okay, we don't think that's correct. We don't think that's correct because we think that the commons, the production of the common, mainly takes part not in the production field, but in all this broad sphere of life that is involved in reproduction of life in its broad sense. Okay. Having said that, I'm going to talk about why our starting point, inspired by the work of Silvia Federici, is constituted exactly by that ever-renewing process and human activities that favor the dignified reproduction of life, even amidst the devastation imposed on us by capitalism. It's exactly from there we try to conceptualize the production and regeneration of the common. Okay. Another important thing about what we think is to think about what another Latin American thinker who is called Bolívar Echeverría, he's an Ecuadorian Marxist who used to teach in the National University of Mexico for decades. His work, we take from his work, that distinction, a very important distinction, that from the political and from politics. And this, the political, in Spanish it sounds actually better. In Spanish it is la política y lo político. We make a distinction from that. We have been dealing with this translating thing that it's not very easy to make this distinction in English language, but let's more or less draw it. Politics is what, by politics, we all refer to this activity of decision-making and of reappropriation, of appropriation, of the capacity of decision of the most by the few, and all this expert activity of deciding in we don't know what kind, or we actually know, but what kind of criteria, what must be done. And we know the criteria because the criteria is what is good for capital is what is decided in politics, because politics is kind of subsumed and trapped by capital and capital interests. But we want to talk about another notion of this human capacity of making, of talking, of making, I lost the word, making, of putting together their minds, and in Spanish we would say making acuerdos. I really can't find the word exactly in English, but the politica is exactly that. It's this human capacity of getting together and regulating their activity. In the first place, we call with him, with Echeverría, to recognize the importance of community for the existence of life. Recognize that human beings produce and reproduce our lives socially, establishing numerous relations of interdependence between members of our human community and between communities of the human and the no-human world. In this sense, community is a fundamental quality of life, an essential precondition for the reproduction of existence. And that's very important because we don't start with Echeverría and with a lot of the thinkers of political ecology that are working in the last decades. We don't start thinking from an individual point of view, but we start exactly the other way around, thinking how or what are the main supports of the very existence of life, of human life and of every life. And that is this interdependence systems. This we can call communities. So, communities are not things that are fixed in time or space. And we actually don't use very much in our own research work the word community because it's so stressed by many emphasis that we cannot go through very easily. But we have produced this term of language that is communitarian weavings. And we think that it's exactly in these communitarian weavings, in and through, we people can support reproduction of life. So this collective character of the way we can support our own existence as a species, as a biological species, and as human beings, it's very, very important for us, and it's very important to really be able to think the transformation of the conditions of our everyday life from the reproduction of that everyday existence. I mean, in a concrete way, not in an abstract, general way that focuses and takes as its starting point the sphere of production, as has been the usage, I mean, as it has been done for many years, mainly in the 20th century. Okay, so we have these distinctions between the political and politics. And we have that we start thinking transformation from reproduction. It looks like a contradictory thing, but that's exactly what we are doing, because when we study struggles all over the world, that's exactly what we find. We find that people all day, every day, try to build things, try to build links, try to cultivate, to take care of the links they make and of the wealth, the concrete wealth they can get to make. They do that every day, and they plan around it, and sometimes they make broader links. And mainly in the indigenous movement in Latin America, we have a very, very vast set of experience of doing that. Hold on, we are not saying that we want to go backwards in time and that we think that we have to stop capitalism. I mean, I mainly think that we have to stop capitalism development just as it is now. But it's not to go backwards. It's to go in a different path, and in a different path that starts to be thought in a very fertile way if we put this reproduction of life in the center of our analysis. And then we distinguish from politics and this political capacity that is a shared condition of human beings in the reproduction of life in general. That is, in Spanish, it says capacidad de dar forma. In English, we have been trying to introduce this expression as the capacity of giving form. Of giving form to what? Of giving form to our concrete everyday life. So, Echeverría names, distinguishing the political and politics, thinks that this basic politicity of human beings is exactly this capacity of giving form to what we face in everyday life and how we shape the way we live collectively. Of course, that capacity of giving form is all the times taken away from us when when the capitalism process developed themselves and kind of separate us. First, separate us from our means of existence. I mean, as it happened a lot of years ago, a few centuries ago, but it goes on and on happening But then capital and capital processes always separates us from that capacity of giving form that is a very, very basic feature of what we share as human beings, and what we make when we are together and when we build and rebuild these links and these relations that capitalism is always destroying and reorganizing, exactly to take away of us this capacity of giving form. So, when producing the common, that, stressing again, is this production of commons in common and giving us and thinking about how we can do that. What we get is that sometimes we kind of confront and face this continuous condition of taking wealth out from us. That is the basis of capitalist production and reproduction. So, if we adopt the perspective of the production of the common, we have to, or we can examine the regeneration and renewal of the processes by which social ties and relations create concrete wealth. Wealth that it's not separated from us. Wealth that is, on one hand, the condition of possibility of our capacity of giving for. And in the other way, it's a material condition, but it's the basis of the possibility to think about how we broaden it, how we make it wider. Mm-hmm. So that is exactly what we are talking about the creative processes which are material and symbolic, that are nurtured by many communitarian weavings by, first, a constantly renewal of the human capacity of giving form, and in doing so, reinforcing the politicity of those communitarian weavings, and then repeatedly guaranteeing and expanding the possibilities of use and enjoyment that are vital to the reproduction of life as a whole. And so we integrate with our argument another very important thing: the possibilities of use and the possibilities of enjoyment together. Mm-hmm. So what we are doing is trying to think, to give and to put ideas into circulations that can contribute to think a way of imagining social transformation in another ways. And I'm very, very glad to be having this chance to talk to you. Because first of all, I want to know if all this makes sense to you. Because your country has been under such level of attack from capital in the latest years. And because I'm sure that some of these things will make sense to you. And perhaps we can understand having a dialogue. Okay. So that is exactly what we think about production of the commons. So regenerating our capacities of giving form, and that capacities of giving forms enforce our politicity, and then we have an expansion of our of the wealth we can use, not own, but use, and of the enjoyment we can get from life, not consuming things, but doing things together and sharing things, and, well, having these opportunities to make these things. Okay. The relations, and that's the last point I want to introduce in this talk. The relations, the social relations of producing the common, of regenerating the common, are relations ambiguously and contradictorily coexisting with capitalism's social relations. I mean, we are not thinking about how to overthrow all capital relations, all capital, because we think we can't. And we can't mainly because we are, there's a discussion, we are inside of capitalism is inside us. So it's, I don't go into that discussion, but that's an important one. I would think that capitalism is inside us, but we are always more than capitalism. So we are always having this ambiguously and contradictorily coexistence with capitalism's social relations. But this production, this capacity of producing the common, is not inside of capital. It goes beyond capital, against capitalism, and then beyond capitalism again. So it is this immediate capacity of affirmation, our human condition, relaunching our capacity of giving form and producing links with all the other. So what are we talking about? I mean, because I'm talking in a very abstract way. We're talking about relations of association, of cooperation that enables on a daily basis the social existence of all of us. And you people have a lot of new experiences in doing so. And here in Latin America, we have an enormous bunch of experiences of doing so. How people make markets all the time, how people help each other all the time. And the thing and the problem is that is thought as non-political, and politics is something else. And what happens if we kind of take very serious what we do in our everyday life to make living possible, and we have that as a starting point, and we start thinking that producing the commons is an activity that includes a semiotic process, as a semiotic process because it's a process of giving sense of our everyday life, and a process of reorganizing the way we are part of societies and collectives and communities, with others always. And if we think from that point of view, I think that we can more or less open a way to rethink the politics and the political, and to think how to get out of this mess we are in. Because we have to go through a very, very hard process of struggle again are doing with us, but we have to start taking very, very seriously how we produce this us. And that is a production of thinking about how we are part of a communitarian weaving that can set to produce commons that are in common used and enjoyed, and then kind of making another another contradictory word, social word, that stops these destructions that capitalism and war makes in us, and that can give us and can stand the possibility of us, we thinking new ways of going through, and new ways of thinking how to face and how to cope with everyday life in a more satisfactory way, in a more easy way. Okay. I hope I have been able to transmit my idea.